So it's late September now, and the change of the seasons is well and truly kicking in, and it's a typical autumn day with alternating sun and rain. And the temperatures are dropping quite rapidly now, so summer is well and truly coming to a close, and we'll be coming into autumn. Fortunately, as an orchid grower, this is also a time when a lot of plants start coming into flower. So I've got a nice little selection here, which has been going for a few weeks now. And the newcomer this week is this SLC Christelle Smith. It's the third time this is flowering in the last 18 months. So very happy with that one. But the big news this week is that I've got an order has arrived from Lucke. It's a Brazilian Cattleya import, only Cattleyas. Got some species in there, some primary hybrids and some complex hybrids. So please stay tuned, and we'll go through, take a look at the different plants. Some of them are, well, I'd say quite uncommon, the species, less commonly grown species. And I'll take you through the process of what I do when I receive these plants, the imports from Brazil, and how we try to get them back on track. I've been through the process a few times now, so I'm getting more confident with that. Yes, I'll take you through that. We can take a look at that. Okay, so this is the contents of the box, and they're all packed in pretty pink wrapping paper, and I see the labels are outside. The first one is Cattleya velutina. So let's take a look at that one. Well, this looks like a pretty good size seedling. Of course, Cattleya velutina is quite uncommon, and I'd say until not that long ago was pretty rare, but does seem to be popping up a bit more often there. It's in the bifoliates, Brazilian bifoliate, I believe, probably fairly closely related to schilleriana and some of those Brazilian bifoliates. Alright, so next cab off the rank is LC Luminosa, Laelia Cattleya. Well, it would just be Cattleya these days, I guess, but this is a really nice primary hybrid between tenebrosa, Laelia tenebrosa, now known as Cattleya tenebrosa, I guess, and Cattleya dowiana. And yeah, the photos I've seen of this one are quite stunning. Really, they're both known, both species are known to impart a lot of intensity of colour into their hybrids. So this is those two intensifiers combined together, and some of the photos are really amazing. But of course, as a seedling, there's really no guarantees what you'll end up with, so something to look forward to. Next cab off the rank is Cattleya Armainvillierensis. Armainvillierensis. Bit of a mouthful. Another primary hybrid. This one is Cattleya Landate by Varshavicii. And well, two very beautiful unifoliate species. And I could only find one photo of this one, which was from the vendors, so I guess this is a primary hybrid that's been out of circulation for a long time probably, and yeah, whoever made that has put a photo, and it really does look like a combination of the two species, well, as you would expect, I guess, but really combining the best traits of both species. Alright, so this next one is Laelia lobata, Concolor variety. Jeny is the clonal name. This is one which I guess I was really looking forward to this one, looking forward to trying to grow it again. I have had it before many years ago when I lived in Australia, when I still lived in Australia, and this is one that apparently likes a lot of light, so I'll be trying to give it as much light as possible. But I am, these days with the current setup, I am able to give a lot more light, so that's why I thought I'll give it another try. But this is a really beautiful clone of Laelia lobata. Right, so this next one is a flowering size hybrid. It's Cattleya Persepolis Splendor is the clonal name. This is a hybrid containing, I think, about 7 of the unifoliate Cattleyas. It's only got unifoliate Cattleyas in it, and yeah, it's a really nice clone. So I thought it'd be nice to have something which is also a bit closer to flowering size, that I don't have to wait for so many years, as with these ones are going to obviously take probably 3-4 years to get up to flowering size. So this next one is Laelia sincorana. This one is also from Brazil. It's one of the miniature Laelias, I guess. I think it's related to Laelia pumila, although in the growth habit is very reminiscent of the rupiculus Laelias, the rock Laelias, and this one grows in very exposed situations on rocks, so it is, and on Velusia bushes in very semi-arid conditions where there could be drought at certain times of the year. And yeah, you can see it's adapted to that. It's adapted to high light with the leaves pointing straight up to minimize the surface area exposed to the sun. And yeah, the pseudobulbs sort of tightly packed together. Yeah, I definitely will be potting this into something else, probably something with some pebbles in it and maybe a bit of bark in a as small as possible container. Alright, so this one's Cattleya schilleriana. This is a new one for me. It's a named clone, Caliman, by Coerulea, and yeah, this is a bifoliate Cattleya with sort of chestnut brown petals, and the lip is pink, sort of pink and white striped lip. It's quite showy, and with the Coerulea varieties, the lip is not blue as such, at least I haven't seen that. More likely the petals and sepals are more of a greenish sort of colour, and the colouring on the lip is less intense. So yeah, but this is a cross between a tipo and a Coerulea. Tipo is the standard form. Coerulea is the bluish, well, not really bluish as such, but more greenish, I guess, in this case. But yeah, this has still got some ways to go, I think, to get to flowering size, but they're not huge. They are smaller than this type of thing. It's much bigger, obviously. I don't think it would need to get that big to flower. Well, this next one is a real puzzle, and it really makes me laugh because I was looking at the label and I saw Cattleya Landate by Tigrina with an 8, what looks like an 8 on it, and I was thinking, I didn't order a Cattleya Landate by Tigrina. I don't even know, I'm not even really sure what it is. And then I saw on the packaging here something, and I was thinking, what does that say? It looks like Ratis. And then I managed to piece the puzzle together because I put this next to it and it's gratis. So that is a free plant. Thank you very much. Very welcome. Right, so the next one, this one, it's another Cattleya, of course. So this one is Potinara, Toshie, Aoki. That's hard to get it to focus. There you go. Toshie Aoki wine flare. Toshie Aoki is a pretty well-known hybrid, I'd say, because you see it a lot, and you see it also used in making new hybrids. It's a popular parent. It's quite a stunning hybrid. I guess it's sort of like the latest in hybridization. I guess you could say it's a little bit over the top, a bit showy, but yeah, I still like to have a couple of those ones. They certainly cheers things up. So yeah, it's not only about growing understated species and primary hybrids. I also like to have a couple of these over-the-top hybrids, but not too many. Okay, last but not least is Cattleya labiata, Coerulea. Coerulea by Coerulea. Yeah. Of course, I've already got 3 labiatas, so this will be number 4. Building up a collection of labiatas, apparently. But I didn't have a Coerulea, so I thought I'll give it a try. But this is actually pretty good value. For €10, I think. I was expecting something quite a bit smaller than that. But it looks pretty good. And yeah, this is, some of these plants at least are from the latest Brazilian import, so they won't have any viable roots on them. Probably like this one, I imagine. Looks like it's just been freshly potted up. And this one as well, Toshie Aoki. But this one looks like it might have been in there for a bit longer because it's got some moss on it and it's growing pretty well. Yeah, so this is what we got in total. 10, 4, 7, 10, yeah, 10 Cattleyas, of which 9 I ordered. I had a dendrobium in the order as well, and turned out it was sold out, so that might be why they decided to give me the free plant, which I think it's a very nice one. I'll look it up what it is exactly. Landate by Tigrina. I think Landate might be a intermediate hybrid. I'll look it up and find out. So the next step will be to repot them into the media and pots of my choosing. I think most of them, if not all of them, will be repotted. Maybe we can take a look at them again after that. Right, so here we are in the greenhouse now, and getting ready to repot them. I think I'm gonna take them all out of their pots and repot them. Yeah, so a lot of these, as I mentioned, would be Brazilian imports, so no roots, and probably a bit confused about what season it is, so it can be pretty stressful. But yeah, in the last 18 months, 2 years, I've been through the same process with quite a few of the other Cattleyas, and it's worked out pretty well. So here's an example up here. This is Cattleya Mrs. Myra Peters. You can see that it's got a sheath with a bud in it, and this is just 1 year old. So it finished growing this bulb last year, and this year it's grown this big bulb. Very vigorous plant. Miss Myra Peters is Schilleriana by Warner. So that one recovered very well. And here's another primary hybrid, Dupriana. This one's from 6 months ago, I guess. It very quickly put out a lot of fruits. Oh, let's see if I can get it in shot. There it is, Dupriana. This one is a hybrid of Varshavicii by I think a schilleriana, something like that. But yeah, now we're going to take a look at these ones. So I'm going to take them out and we'll have a look at the lack of roots and pot them up into the media of my choice. Alright, so this one is Laelia Cattleya Persepolis. It's about 25% Dowiana, 25% Jeny, and some other unifoliate Cattleyas in there as well. Jeny, Mossier, and a few others. So the roots on this are, yeah, most of these roots in reality, I don't think they're going to make it. But the good news is that it is growing some new roots, and it's also got a couple of new growths on it. So yeah, hopefully this one will bounce back quickly, but I'm going to take most of these old roots off, get it to grow some new ones. I find that the old roots, yeah, I experimented with this one with leaving the old roots on, and all they did was sort of turn into a gooey mush. So I think I'd rather just take the old roots away and let the plant develop some new roots. So this is what remains of the roots. I've taken all these ones off, just cut them off. This root here still has a bit of turgidity, so it's still kind of firm. Yeah, the rest really not, so they can all just come off. And then it's got a couple of new roots growing here and there, so I imagine this one will bounce back pretty quickly. Let's hope so. So I think I'm going to try something a little bit different with this one, and not a transparent pot, but an opaque pot. Put a couple of big pebbles in the bottom of it to increase the drainage. The problem I'm having with these transparent pots is that they're getting filled with slime, basically green slime, which is staying moist too long. So it's good to be able to see when they're dry, but in this way I think it's just staying wet for too long. So I'd rather something that doesn't have that problem. So I'm going to try this. Maybe it'd be better to get one with a proper lip on it. Alright, changed my mind. Gonna go for one of these net pots instead. It is a little bit bigger to compensate for the fact that it is going to be drying out a lot faster with all of these air holes. But I've got a couple of other cats over here that are growing similarly, and they're doing very well in this kind of setup. Alright, so the bottom layer here, I've got some little pebbles and some really chunky bark. It's like 3 centimeter bark, and I'm going to put some more of that bark, big bark, on top of the orchid. So I'll put it in like this and place some big bark to sort of hold it, that can hold it in place a bit, and then the smaller bark goes on top of that. Okay, so I layered a little bit of the bigger bark and pebbles around the base of the plant, and just to try to hold it in place, and also put a stake in here. Of course it's not completely stable because the roots aren't holding it in place yet. But just attaching it to this stake will help it to be a bit more stable in the pot. Alright, so there it is, all potted up. It's sitting pretty stable in the pot, pretty happy with that. Put some medium grade bark. I filled it up with medium grade bark just to add some more stability and a little bit more moisture retention. But this is a very airy mix, which will be quite rapid drying, especially in the summer. So it'll need very frequent watering in the summer. In the winter, much less so. But I've been experimenting with a lot of different mixes for the Cattleyas and different potting approaches, and I think this is probably my preferred method at the moment, especially for a larger plant. The Cattleyas really do like to have that airflow coming through, so this can assist with that. Okay, so this one is Toshie Aoki. It's basically the same story as the last one, but a smaller plant, but these roots all need to be removed. I'll just remove them completely, and there's a little growth there, but precious little in the way of viable roots, so it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully it'll quickly put some roots out. My experience with a lot of the Cattleyas is that there is active root growth in autumn and in spring, so that's why I think it's autumn's generally a good time for repotting Cattleyas. At least that's what I've experienced in the last couple of years. A lot of root growth in the coming months, so yeah, let's see how this one goes. So I just chopped those roots off quite mercilessly, but I did leave some material on. Even if it doesn't really function, it does at least add a little bit of stability, and I can see a couple of these roots here are actually still functioning, the white ones, so they'll have the task of hydrating the plant until some new roots appear. Alright, so this is Toshie Aoki potted up now. With the smaller plants, I generally prefer not to do them in the mesh pots. It can dry out a bit too quickly, especially for a hybrid, which probably is more thirsty than some of the other species. I've got some pebbles in there for increased drainage and also weight and stability to hold the plant down, with some medium-sized bark on top of that, and you can see it's sitting there pretty stable. Not really any need to add any additional staking, I don't think, and the little bud is down in there, so hopefully that will start growing or keep growing and start growing some roots. Cattleya schilleriana here. A couple of these roots are still viable, and it has a little bit of sphagnum moss in there around the roots. It's also got a new root coming out here, so I've got a little bit the impression that this one likes a bit more moisture, judging by the roots, the thick roots, so I'll probably try to get this into a setup that holds a little bit more moisture. Okay, so that's schilleriana all ready to go in medium small size bark in quite a small pot. Yeah, schilleriana is pretty readily available these days, but it's also fairly expensive, which makes me think that it's probably pretty slow growing. But yeah, I guess we'll find out. It does have a new root on it coming out, and a couple of the other old roots were still actually alive, so hopefully this is going to recover quickly. Right, so this is Cattleya Armainvillierensis. Been practicing that. Still have a bit of difficulty pronouncing it, but this one is Cattleya Armainvillierensis by Varshavicii, primary hybrid, and this one is not a recent import apparently, judging by the roots which have already established. So they must have had this one for a while, I guess. There's actually two little plants there as well, the second one, but I'll just keep them together to start with. Now it's nicely potted up, and it's been growing a very nice big leaf. So yeah, this one hopefully will recover quickly from the repotting and finalize the growth of this new cane here. Alright, so this one is Cattleya Luminosa, the primary hybrid of Cattleya and tenebrosa, and it was in this pot here, but you can see that it's been grown in a little plug of sphagnum moss, and the roots on it are still actually quite good. So I think I'll put it back into a much smaller pot than this one anyway. So there's Luminosa. I've potted up now, put it into a much smaller pot, a little seedling pot. The sphagnum moss is still inside there, and I put some fine grade bark around it, and I'll put this together with my other seedlings. Alright, so this next one is Laelia lobata Jeny, Concolor, and it's got some new root growth on it. The rest of these roots are dead, so they'll all be going. So there's Laelia lobata all potted up. Put it into a mix with some little pebbles and some medium fine grained bark with seedling grade bark on top of that, just to add a little bit of moisture retention. I think this one grows lithophytically in very exposed areas with lots of sun, so I'll be putting this up in a very bright location. So this is the freebie Cattleya Landate by Tigrina. I did look up Landate, and it's actually a Cattleya by schilleriana, I think. Very nice hybrid, and so that is then crossed back to tigrina. When I first took it out of the pot, it looked like it had a very good root system, but then turned out that more than half of the roots were actually dead. So I took them all off. This is what's left. Hopefully it'll be enough to get it going again. Of course, the bifoliates are known to be to resent repotting, so we'll see how it goes with this one. So judging by those roots, I think this is a plant that probably would like to be able to let its roots roam free. Probably would prefer to be mounted, but I'm going to try growing it in this net pot. Here's an example of another one which has that, I think, the same kind of tendency, where the roots just roam free and most of the roots are outside of the pot. And yeah, I think this is quite a few of the bifoliate Cattleyas have this kind of habit. This one is the hybrid of what was it again? Tenebrosa by granulosa. Granulosa by tenebrosa, that's what this one is. But yeah, you can see that the roots have just gone crazy on this. I suspect this is going to do something similar. Right, so this little one is labiata, Coerulea by Coerulea. So two Coeruleas crossed with each other. And this one, it's just a little seedling really, but it's got pretty good roots on it. So there's Cattleya labiata, Coerulea by Coerulea, potted up. Just nothing fancy, just a medium small grade bark mix, and there was a second tiny little runt in there, which I thought, just for fun, just pop that up into a bit of sphagnum moss and see how that goes. Okay, so this one is Cattleya velutina, the velvet Cattleya. This one is regarded as being a little bit trickier to grow, and I noticed that this growth is pretty much not going to make it, so that one no good. This one however appears to be still in order. The roots were, yeah, it has got some roots on it, some of them were dead. I think it's just been kept a bit too wet. What I've read online, they say very important that this one gets a lot of airflow and dries out very quickly, so I'm going to put it into a very airy mix. Well, you can't really get a much area mix in this. I'd say this is just one step away from being mounted. So this will certainly get a lot of airflow. I just wonder if it's not going a bit too far. If it's going to be able to get enough moisture, I'm going to have to keep a close eye on this one, and because they don't like to dry out either, of course, these bifoliates with the thin reeds, they don't have the adaptation to drought that some of the other Cattleyas do. Well, a lot of them don't. So it's important to keep them frequently watered also through the winter, I believe, but drying out in between waterings. So that's what I'll be aiming to do with this one. So this is the little Laelia sincorana, little miniature in the Laelia section. These are dwarf Laelias with large flowers compared to the size of the plant. Laelia pumila is in the same group. This one grows in pretty harsh conditions, pretty cool conditions. I think it grows up to around 1300 meters in rocky areas. So I think it's kind of rupiculous or semi-rupiculous, but it's not formally categorized as one of the rupiculous Laelias, but it does grow in rocky conditions with a lot of light as well, I believe. There's a lot of different advice out there on the internet how to grow it, and a lot of it's contradicting itself. A lot of the information is contradictory. So I think I'm just going to try to grow it very bright and very free draining, so not that dissimilar to the last one, which was the velutina, the Cattleya velutina. I think somewhat similar conditions to that. So this is a little Laelia sincorana potted up into a tiny little pot with actually a fairly moisture retentive mix in the end, but because it's such a tiny pot, I think that will work out. And as a reference, I've got this Cattleya walkeriana, which is also one of the ones which likes to dry out a bit between waterings. But I think they both do have times of the year when they like a lot more moisture, as evidenced by how this walkeriana has reacted to this this mix with the sphagnum, and with it's got a kind of a little reservoir of water underneath, which slowly dries out, and it reacted to that very well. So I'm hoping that sincorana, given the same treatment, will respond equally well, and in the winter obviously I'll be letting them dry out a lot more.